You're listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, the show that invites you into the lives of people who make up the Ultra family. Here's your host for these conversations, Larry Ryan.
Thanks, MJ. In today's episode, I speak with Julian Summers. He will be taking on the Epic Deca, the 10th anniversary version of Epic 5, in just a couple of days. And I shared the second half of my Steve Brown conversation, which you might call Steve Brown Stories. Welcome to the third season of 515. For the start of this season, I have made a small branding change, which you may have seen on my Facebook page. I am now calling this 515, the Ultra Podcast. When I started, obviously I was associated directly with the Ultraman brand. However, it was never my intention to make this podcast exclusive to the brand name. Even in the first season, I was interviewing other 515 race directors and talking about the wide variety of races around the world. So I'm not trying to stick it to the man, I'm just dropping the man to better reflect the 515 as a whole. The good thing is, for all of you loyal listeners who subscribe, you don't have to do anything. The podcast will still show up in your library automatically every 3 weeks. And in the next 3 weeks, I hope to connect with Ramon Lopez Mendizabal, who was supposed to be in this episode, but we were just not able to connect due to his very busy traveling and racing schedule. I will have him and some other 520K Canada athletes in profile over the next few episodes. My Ohana guest today is a 15-time Ironman and one-time Ultraman finisher in Florida. He was scheduled to compete in 2 more Ultraman races this year, leading up to his big challenge of the Epic Deca, which will be starting in just a couple of days, running from May the 10th to the 19th. He has had a few issues on the way to the start and finish line so far, though, this year. However, life is good for pork chop. Joining me from somewhere in the United States, I am pleased to welcome to the podcast Julian Summers. Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Where are you at exactly today? We've been trying to hook this up for a little bit, and you've been traveling all over the U.S. for the past couple of months. Where are you coming from today?
Today I'm in my office in Mission Viejo. I've got 2 offices, and so I've got one out here, and it's quiet away from the kids, and this is where I am right now, Orange County.
Orange County, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of office are you in? What is your employment?
I have my own insurance agency. I've been running my own insurance agency for about 17 years, so this is my second location, and I have people scattered throughout the U.S. working for me.
And what's had you on the road so much as of late?
Moving to Florida. We bought a house over there. We're going to be going over to live over there and start another agency and another business perhaps, and racing, traveling for Ultraman, and a couple of business opportunities out on the East Coast as well. So just a lot of life stuff.
Mm-hmm. And people may recognize that you have an accent by now. You are originally from South Africa, and not just any part of South Africa, but you are from Durban, the area that recently suffered some pretty massive and tragic flooding. I checked in with you previously, and you said that your family and friends were all safe and doing okay, which is great to hear. But have you spoken to any people over there? What do you know about the flooding that occurred?
Yeah, I mean, my family is thankfully all good. It all suffered damage. Like my cousin's whole apartment flooded, and one of my friends' apartment they used to live in collapsed into the ocean. Basically, no one died, thankfully, from our side, but a lot of devastation, and I believe like 130-year flood or something crazy like that. So, just a lot of chaos. I heard today that the electricity's back on and water's starting to flow, but so that, I think people in general sort of band together when the stuff goes wrong, and it's not any different over there at the moment. So,
yeah, it definitely sounds like it was a devastating thing, and seeing it on the news, what had happened, and the death toll is getting up there pretty high. So, I'm just glad to hear that everybody is safe.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that are not, obviously, and there's some rioting, and there's some it's just desperation. So it's just a tough time to be there. Plus, on top of COVID and the job situation, so yeah. But people band together and they fight through it. I've seen a lot of good stories coming out of a lot of good church stories and people helping each other. So the good part of humanity is coming out.
That's great. That's great. Now, you're one of the athletes who signed up to do the Jen McVeay double this year in this return to racing year, as in you were going to do the Ultraman in Florida and Arizona. You did not start in the Florida race. What happened on that one?
So the Florida race was actually never on the cards. It was like a December, because COVID was happening. So I didn't even think Florida was going to happen. I mean, I'd basically written off all these races. Actually, I didn't think Deca was going to happen in May, but it was the middle of December, I think, and I was like, "This will be really good for me to have a real focused event to help me towards Deca." I mean, I love Florida, and I love all the people, and so I originally told Jen there was like a 30% chance that I would make the race because I had a business engagement, which I was trying desperately to move, and I was told I could move it until about a week before when the guy was like, "We can't move it." So it was always a sort of very dicey race. And I knew that, and I told Jen that, and I just paid it. Hoped I would be able to make it, and I just didn't.
And you are a finisher there in the past.
Yes, I did that race 2019. 2019. Yes. I can't remember, so long ago.
Yeah, but that wasn't going to be a big deal because on your way to Deca, you also signed up for the inaugural Arizona. But you decided to blot out one of your triathlete bingo boxes by getting hit by a car before the race.
Yeah. The whole plan I was so excited to do the inaugural Arizona race before Deca was even going to happen. I was already signed up before Deca started. Right. And then it kept getting moved, COVID, right? So Deca was moved and Arizona was moved in November. And then it lined up. When I talked to coach, it lined up good to do that because, it's good to do a big event, obviously leading up to 10 days. Yeah. I planned to do a bunch of training before so that I was going to be fatigued at the race, not out of any disrespect for the race, but just to really see how I could go. Like I no disrespect for the race, but unfortunately, I was training the day before and it was quite a rough place to ride in Arizona, but there was a lot of cars in the previous days that had come very close to me. But this person actually was someone that wasn't really close to me. It was towing a boat, and he just kind of came across two lanes, and he didn't realize that I was that close, and he was trying to make a right turn, and he just caught I saw him coming, and it happened in very slow motion, and I just went out, and that was it. And I broke 2 ribs.
Yeah, and I can't imagine. And that was like the day before the race?
It was like 4:00 before the swim in the morning the next day. Yeah. So it was, I didn't realize that. I mean, I knew I was sore, but I didn't realize they were broken.
And you probably didn't want to get them checked because you didn't want to know they were broken.
So, yes. So anyone in this world knows that there's more than just about us. We have the crew. Right. So my crew had just were still flying in and we're all excited. And so they came to grab me because I called them and said, "Come get me, please." And then they're like, "Let's go to the ER." And I didn't want to go, but I knew I had to go. And then, but I didn't tell them. So luckily, COVID kind of stopped them from coming into the room. Okay. And so the doctor was like, she was like, "They're swelling. Sometimes you can't tell fractured ribs from the X-ray." She said, "I feel like they are, but they could not be." So it was kind of like a bit of I kind of feel like it first. But I didn't want to let down the crew, so I just came out and said, "No, they're just bruised." And I really wanted to just give it a go, so.
Right. And get another one of those bingo squares for racing with serious injuries.
Yeah, I mean, it's anyone that's done this stuff knows that you never start a race with broken ribs. But I mean, I know people that have started with broken ribs. I started my first Ironman with a broken wrist. I mean, it's never ideal. I don't know how you get to these races in tip-top shape unless you're pushing the limits.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand that, yeah, for not letting down your crew was probably the main decision for you to go ahead and do that race. On your Facebook page, your description says, "I am just a clown enjoying life with my crazy friends and trying to soak it all in each and every day." So I guess that describes your approach to Ultraman Arizona then.
It's my approach to everything in my life. I try not to take anything seriously because I know I'm not going to be here for very long, and I do this for the people. I don't like to let down people. It's just like anybody else, but especially everyone that came for me, and to be right there, and then suddenly, not even just start the swim. So I just said to everybody, I'm just going to start the swim. I couldn't move my left shoulder. But I was like, I'm going to start the swim. And it was 50-degree water. And I was determined, even if I just swim 100 yards, I can't not do that for them.
Yeah.
I don't take it. I guess I don't take it super serious.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to approach it, I think. So these friends of yours that are your crew, tell us a little bit more about who these wonderful people are that help you out. And are any of them going to be on your Deca team as well?
Yeah, so they're all big parts of my lives. They're amazing human beings. It was weird because it lined up that these people could come and crew me. Some of them could crew me for Arizona, and they were going to be my crew for Deca. So it was like we could all sort of work together. They could see my weaknesses, my strengths, figure out some food stuff. Because it's still trying to put it all together on race day. It'd be really helpful in May. And so there was Ivan. And Jess is not crew for me, but Jess crewed for my first Ultraman. And then I gifted her Ultraman as a gift for when she helped me. So I have crewed for her the following year. Mm-hmm. And then, Amanda Kenney, she's going to be part of my crew too. John Riordan was there and later, but they were not with me. Mm-hmm. And then Alin Lupus. Alin Lupus, you probably know of him. He's sort of an Ultraman. How do I say? He's the true spirit of Ohana. He's been to pretty much. He's raced. He's crewed. He's volunteered. He's Mr. Ultraman to me. He's the one that got me through my first Ultraman. So there was 3 in the house that were specifically going to be with me in May.
Yeah, excellent. That's a great way to train those people to work with you, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And are any one of them responsible for your nickname of Pork Chop? Where does that come from?
That was funny. When I did my first Ultraman, we decided that I was going to be the slowest athlete because I didn't really get a chance to train. So we thought I was going to be my little motto was I was the sloth. So we had a little sloth costume, and I was the slowest one. Didn't turn out to be that way at the race for some reason, but. So Pork Chop, I don't really know where it came from. I think it was because I'm a little chubby and not in the best shape, and I don't know. I think maybe I said something, and then it just became Pork Chop. And then Ivan, we decided to make it a team name, and then Ivan went on Amazon and bought this little pig called Colin, and Colin sort of arrived. It was just became this. It was pretty funny actually. We've got to make fun of start of life, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's where it came from, I think.
He made a lot of appearances on the Facebook during your race.
Yeah, there's Colin. Yeah, he's and that story is quite funny because Amanda was telling us. So we had this little pig, but we didn't have a name. So Amanda was telling us about a story when she was crewing for Ram, and they left somebody at a truck stop or something. they figured out like 35 minutes later, and they were driving, and they were like, "Where's Colin?" And then like, what? And then they woke up and like, where's Colin? So that's where we started this thing with the pig. We're like, let's call him Colin. And then we'll go, where's Colin? And then we'll put him in different places. So it was just become this, it was just a fun thing for us.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very fun.
Now, for those that weren't at Arizona and maybe didn't listen to Steve King's great daily updates here on the podcast, you guys started that swim, but you had to be pulled out of the water. Can you maybe just tell the listener a little bit about the conditions that were going on that morning?
Oh my God, it was insane. We get to the lake and it's freezing cold. It's 50 degrees.
What's the name of that lake again?
It's Lake Pleasant, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Lake Pleasant.
So we swam there the days before. It was cold, but it was so clear you could see the rocks on the bottom. It was like the stillest. It was like a bath. And of course, we get there in the morning and it's freezing cold. And for me, I couldn't move my arm. I could barely get in the wetsuit. My whole goal was just to get in the water. But everyone was lined up, excited. Beautiful morning. All of us. So we start swimming. I'm at the back and I'm trying to help another lady that's having a bit of a panic attack. And I'm kind of just trying to ease into this. I'm not even sure I'm going to make it. So we start swimming and it's calm. And within 10 minutes, I feel like something pushing me from behind. And I'm like, there's a little bit of a wind. And then I turn around the swim buoy and now I'm heading back into this so-called wind. And I'm starting to look at like 1 or 2 foot waves. And I'm thinking to myself, this is quite interesting. Like, okay. And I was struggling. But then I was struggling and I was like, well, maybe I'm just being a baby. And I just
maybe it was the one arm paddle.
But exactly. I was struggling because I started loosening up my arm. It was hurting every stroke, but I was able to move.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, I'm just being a bit of a wuss here. And I made this left turn because you have to do these 10 loops. And I made a left turn back towards the dock. And I looked to my right and I surf. So I remember thinking to myself, this is like waves here, but everyone else is swimming. I can't wait to get the down current. That was my original thought. It was insane. Actually, I remember a point where I stopped and I was bobbing and I actually lost the entire horizon of the mountains because I went down. So I thought to myself, well, if I can't see the mountains, how can anyone see me? And I was thinking, there's 30 of us in this water. This could be chaotic. And I was like, well, this could be pretty dangerous. Anyway, I kept swimming. And then I was going to round the first turn to go back and do another set. And they were all waving us out. I'm like, what are they doing? And I thought they were waving me out because I was not going to make it. Because I told the crew I had like 35 minutes for that first loop because it was like, otherwise I wasn't going to make it. So I thought they were trying to scoot me out. And then they said, guys, we're canceled the swim. And I was like, my initial reaction was, this is ridiculous. Why would we do that? And then I stepped onto the dock and I looked back and I was like, dear Lord, how were you swimming in that? Like, thank God they canceled it. So it was insane. It came out of nowhere.
Yeah. And this race doesn't use kayakers with the swimmers, right? Because the loop is fairly short.
We normally do, but they knew the weather was coming, so they sent out an email that evening and changed the entire thing, right. Which was another problem for me because I was like, I can swim with one arm if I can see my kayaker. All of a sudden, we had no kayakers, and I had to sight. So that completely threw me out, but they did that because they were going to do like 1 mile loops, so we couldn't have all these kayakers. And then they knew the weather was coming. I don't think anybody anticipated the weather was going to be that bad.
Yeah.
So they did the right thing for the safety of the athletes. I mean, it was insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm guessing with your injury, you're probably kind of happy not to have to do that full swim and just get on a bike.
Yeah, people have said that to me. I wasn't happy for the other athletes because I know everyone else had prepared for it and they were ready for it. It was certainly advantageous for me, but not about me. I really wasn't rejoicing about it. I was kind of just happy I was out of the water because I thought I was going to die. Then I started realizing, I wasn't being a baby because I literally had thoughts like, I'm just being a baby here. I just got to power through this. And then I looked back because when you're in the water, I don't think when you're in the water, you can't see you can't see how dangerous it is. And then when you're out of the water, you're like, oh my God. So there was one guy was stranded like way down waving, or he was on the side of the rocks. And so it was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
But it was a good experience. I mean, it was definitely an experience. I felt bad for them. There were some good swimmers that were on their second loops. They were powering through it, but I don't think anybody would have survived out there. Maybe I'm wrong, but it wouldn't have been really tough.
Yeah. And you got on your bike. You managed to finish day 1, but on day 2, you ended up with a DNF on day 2. What's the conversation you had with yourself as you start coming to that realization that even though you're trying to power through for your own training and for your crew that have come and been a part of this, what's that conversation that you have with yourself?
So day 1 was a huge challenge because when I got on the bike, the first 10 miles or so, I had these fractured ribs and very sore arm, and my left leg was a bit bruised, and I had to go really slowly because I couldn't really hold on the left side. So I was running down these hills and it was windy because that same wind that was on the ocean or the water, that crosswind in some places. So but I knew I had tons of time, so I'm like, okay. Well, at about mile 10 or 12, I could taste blood in my mouth. So I kind of had this like, okay, this is getting a little crazy because I can, like, why am I tasting blood? And it was like clearly, not a good thing, but it went away after like 5 minutes. So that was kind of consuming my brain. So I got that day done. Then day 2, same thing. I started on the bike, and at about mile 15 or so, I started tasting blood again. I was like, this is kind of stupid. But then it went away again, and I remembered the day before. And honestly, I was just trying to make it. But what happened was I couldn't really get into aero. I couldn't breathe. So my lungs were not letting me get lots of air. And I'm not the fittest athlete in the world anyway. So I was only getting like half bites of air, and my heart rate was like 185. And we had crazy wind on the first, say, 20 miles. So, but then I made up a bunch of time, and I got all invigorated. Like the crew was like, where is Julian? And I was flying. I got into aero, and then I hit this one section where it was supposed to be downhill. We got all wind again. And I had a little bit of problem with my bike. But my bike wasn't the reason that I didn't finish. I got to the point in my brain where I was like, I gave it my all, considering I was actually like, in a weird way, kind of high-fived myself that I got to day 2, because I can't believe I got in the water. If you had told me I would have gotten in my wetsuit on Saturday morning, I would have said that would have been a win. So the fact I got in my wetsuit, got in the water, and did one loop was a miracle. So I was disappointed for the crew, but at the same time, I was like, I still got to get through this. And the main goal this year is to get Deca done. So, I didn't plan to crash. And so I was kind of bummed, but I wasn't really bummed. Like I said, I don't really take the stuff too serious. I mean, my crew was injured. No one else was down and out. It is what it is.
Yeah. And did you find it was a hard conversation with your crew when you said I'm done, or they were like,
no,
oh, yeah, it makes sense?
Yeah, I think they were quite surprised I'd gotten as far as I did. I think,
yeah. They were relieved that you were finally saying, time to stop.
You'd have to ask them that. I don't know if they were relieved, but I think they were like, so afterwards, someone else told me, not them, but a few other people told me that my crew basically said that, like, I was a tough SOB and, and stubborn. And so it was like, in a way, I think they realized, like, I'm not stopping at Deca, come hell or high water. It almost gave them, weird as it sounds, maybe it gave them some confidence that I'm going to get Deca done. Whereas before, I don't think he's going to do this. But like, this guy's not going to give up. I had to stop, but I didn't give up.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I understand that you actually took a business call while you were in the middle of the race as well. Now, I've never heard of anybody doing that before. So what is that all about? What was that your day 2 ride?
No, that was on Friday, because Saturday I wasn't working. So actually on the training ride as well, where I got injured, I actually stopped for like half an hour and take some calls. And it was funny because I was talking to one of my biggest clients, and I was behind a pole because it was windy. And he was like, "You outside?" I was like, "Yeah, I had to step outside." And I'm like on the bike. Self-employed, I got to keep the business going. So I took a business call, and it was good. Got it done, and it was I think it was day 1. Day 1, I took a call. Yeah, I just for like 5 minutes. It wasn't a big deal.
5 minutes is 5 minutes. I don't know a lot of athletes that are going to give up 5 minutes.
Well, lucky for day 1, we started at 9, so we had a whole bunch of extra time. It wasn't like a typical. It would have typically been about 6 hours. Well, let's say 5 hours. 5 hours. Let's say a 3.5 hour swim. I would have had 7 hours. So
yeah.
So I had the time.
Yeah. Now I know as also as part of your training, you did decide to get out and do at least part of the run on day 3. Is that right?
Yes. This was a crazy day because I wanted to run. Because I had been running so well in the gym, like I've been doing these treadmill speed classes, which changed my running because I'm not a very good runner. And I'd been dying to get to the run because I thought, I can surprise some people on this run. And of course I was hurting and I hadn't run. I'd biked, running, bouncing up and down with my ribs was like, so I went outside and did a little run the night before and it wasn't very good. And then the crew was like, "You're not running." I was like, "Oh, like hell, I'm not running." And they're like, and then they were, they are invested. So they said, "Listen, if you go and ruin Deca now because you're being stubborn, now so it kind of weighed on me." But we spoke to the coach and said, what's the story? And he said, listen, if you can deal with the pain, you've already ridden 2 days out there, like 200 miles, whatever you did. Why don't you go run? So I said, okay, I'll go run 2 miles. Let me run 2 miles. And they said, everyone agreed, 2 miles, done. So once we hit like mile 3, they were on the side of the road and they were calling me, and I just kind of ran by them, pretended I didn't see them. And I was like, I could do 5 miles. So then I hit like 5 miles and we turned around and I was doing pretty good. And they were like, okay, we'll give you, I was like, can I do 5 more? And they're like, okay, 5 more. And then it got to 10 and they were like, okay, you got to be done. I was like, let me get the half marathon, because that was a little target. And then we hit the half marathon. I was just flying. I mean, for me. So I was like, how about 16? And then they're like, okay, 16, that's it. And then I hit like 15 and my crewmate, Jessica, came up and she said, we're voting to let you go to 20. I was like, let's do it. But that was it. They were like, 20 is it. I ran to 20 and I think maybe it was 20.5 or something, but it was good. I felt really good. As a matter of fact, I got in the car and my legs I felt so good at 20. I was like, I should have done the marathon, but then, it was a longer picture. So yeah, it was a good run. I mean, it hurt, but I felt good.
Now, not having got across that finish line on day 3, I know that you had a dedication that you wanted to go out for day 3. And I don't know, did Steve end up doing that for you? Maybe you can just tell us what your dedication was for that race so that it gets out there into the public and you have a chance to say it.
Yes, Benicia Nordia, yes. Yeah, she was a really nice lady that I met through Facebook, through a rugby group. She lives in my hometown, and my mother had passed away in 2014. We sort of became friends. She was an older lady and just sort of took me on my. She just so nice. And she was a diabetic and she was in a wheelchair. And I went over to South Africa and I surprised her with a helicopter flight. And we went and spent the whole day. Yeah, I rented this helicopter and we flew like 3 hours away into the mountains and with her and her daughter. And we just had this amazing, she had something she would never get a chance to do. And she passed away like, not unexpectedly, she was sick, but she was always supporting me and always like, no matter what happened, she's like, you did good. And she was really nice.
Well, let's get on to talking about this Epic Deca race. We've had Juan Criveri on the podcast to talk about it previously, season 1, episode 5, and Rad Chad.
That's Epic 5.
Epic 5, yes, Epic 5, and Rad Chad as well. But now this is, and they've described it, and people probably know the 5 iron distance races on 5 Hawaiian islands in 5 days. But you're doing the Epic Deca. Tell us, what is the Epic Deca?
So it's basically the Epic 5's 10-year anniversary, which was supposed to be, in 2020, and thanks to COVID put that out. So they just came up with this idea, Rebecca and Chris Brennan, that they were going to double it for the 10-year anniversary. So it's just double the 5, basically, in essence. It's probably not exactly the same because it's not, but anyway, that's the idea, was that it's a 10-year anniversary. They were going to do 10 for the 10-year anniversary and 10 athletes instead of 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're going over how many islands in those 10 days?
You're going to get me on this one. I think it's 6 islands. Oahu, Lanai, Maui, the Big Island, 5 islands, 6 islands. Because I think it changed. I think it was 5 and then it was 6. Yeah, so 6, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Now, like many of the other races, as you said, this one's been postponed for a couple of years. And even a regular Epic 5 doesn't have a super huge field in it because there aren't that many people out there that want to go do 5 races in a row in 5 days and all the logistics of changing islands. So do you know how many people they're expecting on the starting line for this Epic Deca?
Yeah, it depends on which day you ask. I know a bunch of people have dropped out. I know that there was a whole, and if they're listening to that, I hope they listen, because they were all giving me a hard time about, I took on more than I could chew, and I'm the last one left of like a whole bunch of these guys. And I messaged them like, hey, well, I'll see you in Hawaii. Oh, that's right, you're not going to show up. I think there's 7 or 8 for the Deca, and I believe there's 3 or 4 for the 5, because they're running the 5, I guess, concurrently. I don't know how exactly they're doing that, but around 12 in total, but probably 7 or 8 for the 10.
Okay, yeah. I know Friend of the podcast, JD Tremblay, just signed up for it, taking Joe Jaffe's spot.
Yes, him and I have been messaging a bunch. He's a super good guy.
Yeah.
He'll probably only ever see me at the breakfast or the dinner because he's like a 10-hour athlete. I'm not even running by 10 hours.
Yeah. He's looking forward to that.
Yeah, we message a bunch.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, I'm sure that you've probably laid out some pretty intense plans as far as your nutrition and hydration and sleep and places to attack the course and all that kind of stuff. Have you decided if you will drink Tailwind or use it as a cooling purpose at this race?
Yeah, if I have to cool with that, there's going to be problems again. But definitely, that Jess was not going to be there. She's the one that cooled me with Tailwind last time. But no, drinking it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that one in there for you.
Yeah, I know. Hey, it was the only thing that went wrong. I've done all kinds of Ironman, all things go wrong. That Ultraman, nothing went wrong. And the only thing that went wrong, if you put it in inverted commas, is that I was sprayed with Tailwind at mile 45 instead of water. So in the grand scheme of, I'll take that all day long. So.
Yeah. So you've told us a lot about this crew of yours. Can you tell us a little bit about your crew at home? Who are the people that are supporting you and making all this possible for you? And will any of them be taking the trip with you?
No. So my wife, bless her heart, who's put up with me for 22 years, and anybody who really knows me just thinks that woman deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. and then my two kids, Moneypenny and Cash. So my wife is Moneypenny, and my daughter's Moneypenny, and my son is Cash. But they, my wife just lets me do what I need to do. But I also don't really impede on their lives. So that's kind of why I never really do very well, I guess. I can't train a lot because I refuse to go on those long weekend bike rides. And my wife actually sometimes says to people that I did an Ironman off the couch, which is not entirely true, but because I'll get up at 4 in the morning. Like this morning, I was up at 3:30 riding my bike. So by the time they wake up, I'm done 4 hours. So, but they're the ones that sort of support me. And my daughter always watches me cross the finish line if she can. So, and my wife thinks I'm crazy, but no matter what.
Well. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And is it true that you guys got together after only 5 weeks? You got married after only 5 weeks?
Yes, I met her 5 weeks later on a day. We went to Vegas and got married, and it's 22 years around October.
That's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I've seen on your Facebook post that Cash is playing some beach volleyball. Is that right?
Indoor. He's actually an indoor player, but he's doing a bit of beach as well. Yeah, he's a really good player for his age.
So is your family trying to follow in the footsteps of Peter Bourne and Tri Bourne, the USA Olympics athlete? Are you familiar with them?
Yeah. Well, Cash is interesting because he might be able to get a South African passport. So we know another American South African player. So we're really talking about potentially they would play.
Wow.
Because, they're playing at American level. Now, he would never be able to play for America just because there's so many good players. And he's only 5'6" at the moment, and he's unlikely to be 6'5". But he might be good enough to play with, and represent South Africa. So we'll see. Who knows?
That would be great, yeah.
It would be cool, yeah.
Well, listen, thanks for coming on the show and sharing your info. We'll be watching your progress at Epic Deca, and I understand it'll be your birthday a few days after the race on May 22nd. Is that correct?
I'm going to celebrate on the ocean with my 10 medals.
when you're going to take your count from 15 to 25 in just 10 days.
And I'm going to beat Jack Nunn. Jack Nunn he's always had more Ironman than me, but I told him I'm going to go straight past you.
Well, that's going to make for a great present.
Yeah, it would be great.
Well, happy birthday in advance. And I know that you always say that life is good. So get out there and keep living that good life.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
A reminder to listeners that I do include a wide variety of show notes for every episode. They often have links to the races and the people mentioned. Check the show notes this week to see how to follow Pork Chop through Epic Deca. In the last episode, I had a great conversation with Ultra 520 Canada race director Steve Brown. During that conversation, he revealed that the 520 will run its last race this summer in Penticton, and he is going to bring in the Ultra 355 format going forward. Go back and listen to that if you missed it and want to know more about that race. Steve has been organizing Ultra Tries in Penticton since 1993 with Ultraman Canada and the 520. So I asked him if he had any memorable races that he had organized that stuck out in his mind, and rather than answer in a way that he talked about what he did as the organizer, he wanted to talk about some of the athletes that had made an impact on him or had memorable performances. So here's the rest of that conversation, where he talks about just some of the memorable athletes that exude the aloha, ohana, and kokua.
What I really want to do, Larry, is probably recognize some of the athletes more than, the events themselves, because we've had some amazing performances.
I can see one right behind your head there.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to talk about him. There's three people in particular that I want to mention in this little segment. But,
sure.
I wanted to recognize, some of the people that have done amazing performances here. One of the highlights, of course, is Kate Bevilacqua, first woman ever to win an ultra outright. Men, women, whatever, she won the whole thing. And that was amazing to be a part of that. A very, very cool experience to watch Kate do her thing with that. And of course, she's gone on as a pro athlete. She's had all kinds of successes, but that was really neat. From a local standpoint, of course, we've had Kevin Cutjar. He's won it here. Dave Matheson, another really good friend here. He's won it twice. And when you ask about races that have organized that were fun, the first time that Dave won, there were 6 guys in this race that were all right there from the beginning. John Bergen, Craig Percival, Jake Isaacson, Mike Owen, and Inaki Dellapara, as well as Dave. Those guys were going head to head all 3 days. And it's the only time that I've had to use penalties to separate the crowd a little bit. Those guys, the competitive juices were flowing. So we had some instances of people jumping red lights down in Oliver and stuff like that. So, so we had to go and, have them have little chats with them about some of their behavior on the road. Yeah. But this all just came right out of the competitive nature out of those guys, and they were all just going so hard. So that was kind of fun to watch. Another athletic performance that was really cool to watch was Kanoka Azumi from Japan, who has and still holds the women's run record, 6:59:33 on that double marathon course between Princeton and Summerland. Just an amazing performance. We've never seen a woman on that course run like that. And it was just staggering to watch. That was really cool. And if any of you are Facebook friends with Kanoka, you can see she's done all kinds of amazing things. She is a fabulous runner, and so that was fun to watch. And then as you know, Larry, there's a lot more to the event than just that. And I got to make mention of another incident that happened in 2015 with Nate Smitterball and Robert Fabes. And Nate was having problems with his bike, and his bike broke down, and he was basically going to end up being out of it. But Robert Fades and his crew came back. They came by him, and they ended up giving Nate a wheel so that he could finish the race, which, as you know, that's part and parcel of what being an Ultraman is about. And that kind of helping each other and everybody working together to get to the finish lines. And it doesn't matter, any of that other stuff. It's all about helping each other. Anyway, Nate got himself together and got the thing going, started riding again. And as it turned out, he eventually passed Robert again and comes in and he finishes. This is on day 2 of the bike, finishing in Princeton. And anyway, it was amazing. Saw Nate come down and he stops. About 20 feet from the finish line. Mm-hmm. And he would not cross the finish line until Robert caught up to him.
I remember being there on that one too, yeah.
And it was one of those moments when you just go, holy cow, these guys really get it. This is what it's about. And Robert comes in, and it was really funny because Robert was quite focused on just getting to the finish line. and Nate and there's Robert, and jumped on his bike and comes in. So there's on the times there's about a 5-second difference between that 5 seconds was Robert just kind of coming through and Nate suddenly realizing he was there. But that whole thing of Nate would not take advantage of coming through and blowing through there. And he would have beaten Robert by, in that case, quite a number of minutes, right. Because he waited quite a while at the finish line for that to happen. So, those are the kinds of things that happen in Ultra that you just sort of go, okay, this is fun. This is why we do this, because there's those kinds of experiences. But let me just tell you about 3 people in these races that have had an effect on me. Not just about the races, was again kind of about what happened with these people. And the first one was a lady from down on the coast there. Some of your listeners may know her, Susan Taylor. And Susan was a trainer and, but she's a hell of a swimmer. And Susan's whole thing in coming to the Ultra was that she wanted to come and set the swim record for women at the Ultra. And she managed to do that with a 3:13 swim. And, those records have since fallen. But in 2006, when Susan did this, that was an impressive swim. And she finished that swim in record time. Of course, the trick is for any record to stand, you have to complete the whole thing.
Right.
Sue, it was interesting because Sue is a big lady. And, when we first met Sue, we looked at her and thought, okay, she can swim. And she's probably pretty good on a bike, being, fairly big and strong. But the big concern was whether she'd be able to run and finish that run over what is, I think acknowledged to be a very, very tough run course. You've been over it a number of times. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, Sue finished both bike days and did a great job. But I'll tell you, I could have gone around on the morning of the run and taken all kinds of people's money who were willing to bet that she would never complete the run, or she'd certainly not complete it within the 12 hours or whatever. And Sue went out there, and I talked to her before the run, and I said, how are you feeling? You've had a couple of good days. You know, are you going to get this done so that you get to keep that record? And she says, yeah. She says, I've got a plan. I plan on running a half marathon every 3 hours. That's the pace I'm going to be running at. So if you're standing out there waiting for me, you're going to have a long wait. So she said that, and it was really funny because at the first half marathon, I'm standing there with Steve King, and he's going, holy cow, the only person that hasn't been through is Sue Taylor. And I looked at my watch and I said, oh, she's got another 10 minutes. He says, what do you mean? I said, she's planning on running 3 hours for every half marathon. And he says, oh my God, I don't know. You know, will she be able to keep that up? And so on. And I'm telling you, we're standing there having this conversation, and you look at the road ahead, and around the corner comes Sue. And she ran by us at around 2:57 for that first half marathon. So anyway, so I said, see, 3 hours, Steve. She only has to do that 3 more times, and she's got this thing figured out. Anyway, Larry, the long and the short of it is she made it through the marathon. She made it through the 3/4 mark. And at that point, she goes by and she says, I'm going to start picking it up now. I'm going, what? And it was really funny because, you know, she was still behind a few people, but she had been closing in on a bunch of the people that took off like rabbits and suddenly found out what the second half of that run course was all about. And so she started down, and it was really cool. She ended up running down 3 other runners, ended up finishing in 11 hours and 31 minutes, completed the whole thing. And it was just an amazing performance. And it was interesting because it changed my perspective on the course and on the event, and how I had talked to people previously about their training. Because I often get questions, how do I train for this? How do I do this? How do I do that? And Sue changed my whole perspective around all of that. And from that day on, when I talk to people about the event, getting ready for the event, I often reflect back to Sue's performance and just go, you know what? You got to have guts. You got to have determination and have a plan. And if you stick to it, you're going to be successful. And that was one of the great performances. I think the good athletes will always have great performances, and watching a great athlete perform is always wonderful. But to watch an ordinary, everyday individual go out and do that was amazing. The other person, and as it turns out, that same year was Tony Barstas. Tony, she sent in her application to me quite early on. And I was quite excited, from the Indiana area and stuff. And I thought, that'll be really neat. Because I used to work in that area, and I used to go to South Bend. And as it turned out, she actually was a professor attached to the colleges at South Bend, Indiana, Notre Dame. And anyway, so I was really looking forward to meeting her and so on. Tony called me up a couple of months, 2 to 3 months after I got her application and that. And she said to me, Steve, I got to ask you something. She said, I've just been diagnosed with brain cancer. Will you let me race? And I, without hesitation, I said, absolutely. If you want to do this race, you come and do it. That, whatever it is, you do it. Tony, it was funny because I got a call from Dave, her husband. We chatted and stuff during the period of time when she was training. And he's saying, oh my God, I'm trying to get her off the bike so she'll stop training. Just because if she crashes, her medication stuff is such that if she crashed and got hurt, she'd probably bleed out. And I'm going like, oh man, I don't want to really be hearing that. But anyway, she stuck with it. She did an amazing job. And she ended up coming here and doing the race. And she finished it in 30 hours and 56 minutes. Just amazing. Only weeks after finishing some of her treatments and stuff. Just so gutsy and so moving emotionally. Mm-hmm. She then came back the next year and did the race again and knocked an hour and a half off her time. Now that she'd had some time to recover and so on. And in the meantime, she'd also, and then afterwards, I think she'd been to Hawaii. She just raced there and so on. Mm. Anyway, the thing with Tony and where it moved me and what really got to me was a couple of years later, she was interviewed in one of the industry magazines, and they were talking about kind of her whole journey doing what she'd been doing. And she said in this article, which just totally blew me away, she said, I have to thank Steve Brown for helping to save my life. And I'm going, what? What the hell did I do? And just by me saying, yes, Tony, come and race and come and do that, gave her, I guess, the motivation, whatever it was that she needed to be able to go through with her treatments and all that kind of stuff. And it really affected me because as a race director, it makes you sit back and think about some of the decisions you make. Mm-hmm. It makes you think about what influence are you having on people's life, whether known or unknown. And to find that out a number of years later was really emotional for me. I was just completely blown away by it. And so, she's sort of the second person that I have, a real affinity for in over the years of the things that have happened. And as you pointed out, the third guy is the guy in that picture right behind me there, Andrei Kajlic, an amazing athlete, a para-athlete for those in your audience who maybe don't know who Andrei is. Lost his legs in an accident in his 20s. Was hit by a train and ended up losing his legs. And when he started into his rehabs and stuff and decided that he was going to become an athlete, he went at it with a vengeance. And it was really funny because I got a call from Andrei and he said, I'd like to come and do your event. And I thought, oh, okay. We'd never had a wheelchair athlete do our event. And I was skeptical. Only from the standpoint of knowing more that last half of that run course, I thought, oh my God, that whole, for almost a marathon's worth, it's gravel and dirt. And I'm thinking, oh, how are you going to do this? And he says, I'll send you a video. So he sent me a video of him doing the Brazil 135, the 135K.
Yeah.
You're familiar with that event as well, Larry. Anyway, Andre sent me this video. And after I saw him on one section of that event where he had to climb up the side of a mountain, essentially, using only his arms, with a rope tied around his waist, and the other end of the rope tied to a wheelchair at the bottom. And he would climb up, he crawled his way up to the top of this thing and then would pull the wheelchair up behind him. And I'm watching this thing and I'm like tearing up watching this thing. And I'm just like, my heart was just jumping out of my chest. And I called Neil in because he sent it to me at work. I called Neil in and I said, check this out. And we were watching him do that. And I said, he's coming to Ultraman. He is coming to do this race. So anyway, so I got in touch with him and said, Andre, it'll be my privilege to have you here and doing this thing. 28 hours and 28 hours and 4 minutes he took to do this. But here's his sense of fair play in all of this, Larry. Obviously, we all know that if you've got the hand crank wheelchair and so on, you can go pretty well on those things. Yeah. But the big thing was the run. He could have, and as you know, that first 38K of the run course is all pavement. He could have gone in a racing wheelchair and gone screaming along and built up one hell of a lead on that thing. And then whatever it took to get over the gravelly part. And then on the back end, get back into his rhythm on a racing wheelchair to finish off that last 10, 12K. He wouldn't do that. He said, that gives me an unfair advantage. And that's not why I came here. And he did the run in basically a regular wheelchair. And again, over that gravel road for whatever it is, about 40K over that gravel road. And just sort of spoke to the character of the individual and the toughness and what have you. And just an amazing performance, an amazing individual. And just to digress a minute back to his bike, day 2 in the bike. Were you there that year?
Yeah, I was there that year, yeah.
Okay. So at the finish line, day 2 on the bike, he's coming down from, in those days when we sort of sent everybody up to Allison Lake and they came back in. There's that downhill run. Well, he comes into the finish line at the arena and he had to be doing 60 plus K an hour coming through there on this wheelchair. And it was just amazing. And that picture that you see back there of him is him pointing at the finish line and just screaming as he's coming in there. And everybody is going bananas. Yeah. But then as he approaches the finish line, we're thinking, oh my God, he's going to run out of real estate and he's going to pile into the bank at the end of this thing because there wasn't much distance between the finish line and the bank at the end of it.
Yeah.
And we're just thinking, oh my God, he's going to crash, and everybody's kind of bracing for that. And he just came in, and as he's approaching the bank, he turns the wheelchair up onto one wheel and does a wheelie and spins around and then just glides back to the finish line. The place was going bananas. It was just one of those amazing moments. You're going like, did I just see that? And it was great. But he's another guy that gave me a whole different perspective and on human beings' ability to overcome whatever obstacles are thrown in front of them and put on performances that are just astounding. That's why people should watch the Paralympics and that kind of thing. Some amazing performances. And when you see something like that, it really gives you a different perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think what I'll do is I'll get that video of him doing the Brazil 135 and add it to my show notes, because I remember seeing that too, and it was just amazing.
Yeah. Very cool. Cool.
And Steve King, it's interesting that you choose these people, because Steve King also did a Steve King story on Tony a few episodes ago, back in episode 5 of season 2. Yeah. She was one of the people that he highlighted. Yeah.
It's really cool. And we, there have been others over the years, there have been some really cool performances and so, and some really cool individuals that have been fun to get to know. Amy Van Tassel, another pro athlete out of the States. Amy became a fairly good friend after being here a couple of times, and she came to Challenge the year I was race director of Challenge Penticton. Amy came up and raced in that, and she's a very cool individual. There's just been so many people that have been through transformations. Curtis Flock. Many people know Curtis.
He showed up at Ultraman last year as a
I heard that. Probably one of the greatest transformations of an individual that I've ever seen. It was really funny when Curtis showed up. He kind of had that swagger, and it was all about Curtis, and it was all about him, gonna lay it down on the bike and all this stuff. Almost with the attitude like, what do I need a crew for? Why are you making me do this? All that kind of stuff. At the end of it, he was a changed individual. What he went through on the run and all that stuff after, and realizing how much help he got from the people around him. Mm-hmm. He now is one of those guys. He loves the ultra event. He is one of the first guys now, if he's around, to jump in and help. And so it's really funny to see some of those things. And Curtis was a changed man after doing that event. And those are the things that keep us coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Steve, I really appreciate the time you've given today and the stories and the history that you've shared of the race in Penticton. It's been really good to listen to. Over the next 4 episodes, I will be highlighting or profiling athletes from your 2022 Ultra 520 final race, now that we know, starting with Ramon Lopez Mendizabal, and then some more in the episodes coming up after that. So we'll get to hear even more about your race. And I thank you for sharing your time today and some of the legacy that your time running ultra in Penticton that has, spread around the world now, from people that were at your races to going out and starting their own and all that kind of stuff. It's just an amazing thought that you've done that for so many years, and people of the ultra community are truly appreciative of all those years of hard work that you put into this. And going to be sad to hear that you're not doing the full ultra, but this 355 sounds like it's going to be something to really hold on to. So we'll look forward to seeing that. And I look forward to seeing you in Penticton this summer.
All right. Thanks, Larry. It's been fun, and we'll keep people informed as to what's going on, and through this transition time and so on. And hopefully, some of your listeners might be interested in taking a look at the 355, and or come up and watch both my event and Brad's event. They're only a week apart. If you got a couple of weeks you want to spend in the Okanagan, it's not a bad way to come up and do it. So anyway, thanks very much, and thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, if you liked what you heard today, please tell a friend and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you'd rate and review the show while you're there. Drop the names of the people you think we should interview, and we'll get in touch with them and make that happen. Thank you for listening to 515, the Ultra Podcast, a production of 55 Enterprises. Now really, go subscribe now before you forget.